"What do you mean we're sending out cars with broken axe in a heat wave?" Xavier Olson stared at the operations report on his laptop, eyes narrowing. It was the third complaint this week from the same location, Store 4, right outside Bakersfield. One customer claimed the brakes squealed the entire trip. Another said the interior smelled like mold. Yet the branch kept reporting everything's running smoothly. Something wasn't adding up. Xavier had bought the rental car chain 8 years ago from a retiring couple and spent years turning it into a 6-location operation across California. But lately, he'd been buried in expansion meetings and the day-to-day that had slipped out of his hands. "I'm tired of the filtered reports," he muttered, pushing back from his desk. "I'm going in." The plan was simple. Disguise as a new trainee named Eric, with thick glasses, a trimmed beard, and a uniform cap pulled low. Nobody at Store 4 had met him before. He usually only dealt with store managers during quarterly reviews, and even then, over Zoom. He showed up the following Monday with a duffel bag and a fake resume. The district manager had pulled strings to get him in under the radar, telling the branch manager they were short-staffed and needed all hands on deck. Store 4 had been running a skeleton crew for weeks. 2 employees had quit due to burnout, and 1 was on medical leave. That meant long days, short breaks, and too many corners being cut. "Name?" The branch manager barely looked up from her clipboard. "Eric," Xavier said, keeping his voice low and steady. "Fine, grab a vest. You're with Miles today. He's in the back lot. Try not to slow him down." The manager's name was Dana. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, and a tone that always sounded like she just ran out of patience. She didn't offer a handshake out back. Xavier met Miles, a lanky guy in his 20s who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "You're the new guy?" Miles asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Cool. Hope you like baking in the sun." They were assigned to clean incoming vehicles, vacuum interiors, restock air fresheners, wipe down dashboards, and run them through the automated wash. The first few cars were fine. Smelled a little stale, but nothing dangerous. Then came the blue sedan. "You serious?" Miles said, opening the door. "Smells like a wet dog got locked inside for a week." Xavier peeked in. He gagged. "Why is this even in rotation?" Miles shrugged. "Dana says if it starts, it rents." Xavier blinked. "The axe busted, the upholstery's damp, there's black spots on the backseat." "Mold," Miles said. "We told her last week. She said we don't have budget to pull cars out of the lineup." Xavier felt his chest tighten. "That's not how this works." Miles laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Welcome to Store 4, man." The next few hours, Xavier saw more of the rot: a minivan with a cracked windshield, a compact car with a steering wheel that shook at high speeds. None of them had been flagged. When he tried mentioning it to Dana in passing, she waved him off. "If customers don't like it, they can pay more for the premium lot," she said. "We're not a luxury brand. We move cars fast. That's how we keep up." "But what if someone gets hurt?" he asked. She didn't even answer. Just walked away. Later that afternoon, a young woman named Marcy introduced herself during a water break. She looked barely out of high school, but she moved fast, knew her job, and helped Xavier figure out the vacuum system when he got stuck. "You're working hard," he said. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I need the hours, trying to help my mom pay rent." Xavier nodded. "You like it here?" She hesitated. "It's okay, management doesn't listen much, but I like the team." "Miles has my back." That evening, as they locked up, Xavier caught Dana signing off on a van with a check engine light. She looked up, saw him watching, and narrowed her eyes. "Something you want to say?" He shook his head, forcing a smile. "Nope. Just learning the ropes." But inside, he was burning. He'd trusted this store to operate with integrity. Instead, vehicles were being shoved out the door, unsafe and unclean, just to hit numbers. And the worst part, no one seemed surprised. By the second day, Xavier didn't need a report to tell him Store 4 was in trouble. He could feel it in the air: the tension, the fatigue, and the quiet way employees avoided eye contact whenever Dana walked by. No one complained openly. They just worked faster. That morning, he was assigned to the front desk with a man named Curtis. Curtis was in his late 30s, wore a faded company polo, and typed with the speed of someone who had memorized the system through sheer repetition. "Try not to promise anything we can't deliver," Curtis said, glancing at the screen. "If a customer's upset, just call me over. Dana doesn't want trainees handling escalations." Xavier nodded. "Got it." "So what do we say if someone asks about the condition of their car?" Curtis leaned back in his chair, lips pressed into a line. "We tell them it passed inspection, even if it barely did." "Is that common?" Curtis hesitated. "Let's just say it's more common than it should be." The first few customers were in and out, quickly, business travelers needing cars for the day. But then a couple came in, both in their 70s, dressed neatly and holding a reservation printout. They'd requested a mid-size sedan for the week. Curtis pulled up their file. "Looks like we've got a Corolla ready out back, spot 22. The woman smiled. "Perfect. My husband's got a heart condition, we just want something clean and cool." Xavier offered to walk them out while Curtis prepped the paperwork. When he opened the Corolla's door, the heat hit him like a blast furnace. The AC controls were set to full, but only warm air blew out. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "Let me check something." The husband was already wiping sweat from his brow, clearly uncomfortable. Xavier popped the hood and stared at the engine bay, pretending to look knowledgeable. He wasn't a mechanic, but he knew enough to recognize a broken compressor line. He walked briskly back inside. "Curtis," he said quietly, "that car's AC isn't working." "We can't give that to them." Curtis didn't blink. "That's the only midsize we've got left. Everything else is booked. Then upgrade them." "I can't authorize that without Dana." Xavier turned to find her standing at the printer. "Dana," he called out, voice calm. "We've got a couple outside, older folks. The car they were assigned has no working AC. Can we give them a crossover instead?" She didn't even turn around. "No free upgrades, that's policy." Xavier frowned. "But they can wait or take what we have," she said flatly. "You think we've got cars growing on trees?" Curtis gave him a look that said, "Let it go." But Xavier didn't move. "They're elderly," he said, louder now. "The man's sweating and looks pale. This could be dangerous." Dana finally looked up. Her gaze narrowed. "You're the new guy, right? You're not in charge here. If they don't like the car, they can cancel the reservation and find another company." He stared at her, stunned. Curtis looked away. Behind him, he heard the door open. The couple was walking back in, the woman fanning her husband with a brochure. "Sir," Xavier said quickly, stepping forward. "Please sit down. We're going to get you something better." Dana crossed the room in 3 strides. "No, we're not." Xavier turned to her, voice low. "You're putting a customer's health at risk to save a few dollars. If you want to keep this job, you'll stop talking like that." Curtis didn't say a word. Xavier looked back at the couple. "Give me 10 minutes, he said. Then he grabbed a key from the wall, a crossover parked in the back lot, and pulled it up front himself. Dana followed him out. "You don't get to override me." Xavier kept his voice steady. "They can take this vehicle. I'll pay the difference out of pocket if I have to." She stopped, arms crossed. "That's not how we do things here." He handed the keys to the customers, helped them into the car, and made sure the AC was running before they drove off. Only then did he turn back to Dana. Her expression was stone. "You just cost us $150 on that rental. You almost cost us a lawsuit. Maybe you're not cut out for this location." He didn't reply. Just walked back inside and resumed cleaning out another returned vehicle, one with a sticky backseat and a missing rearview mirror. That afternoon, Marcy flagged him down by the vending machines. "Hey," she said quietly, "I saw what happened. That was brave." Xavier shrugged. "It was the right thing to do." She glanced around, then leaned in. "Dana's been like this for months. Ever since 2 of our full-timers quit, she's been snapping at everyone. Curtis won't say anything, but he's been here the longest. He used to be assistant manager, but she demoted him, said he wasn't aggressive enough with upsells." "She demoted him?" Xavier asked. "Yeah." She wanted someone who could drive performance, so she took over the floor herself. Xavier's hands tightened on the paper cup he was holding. What about HR? No one wants to risk it. Most of us are part-time. If you speak up, your hours just disappear. Later that evening, while dumping trash from the rear lots, Xavier spotted something behind the loading dock. Two young employees, probably high school age, sitting on crates and silently eating from brown paper bags. Neither wore name tags. He approached. "Hey, you guys on break," one of them nodded. "Dana says we don't clock out for lunch if it's under 15 minutes. You're not scheduled for a real lunch. Only full-timers get that. We're just here for wash and vacuum." Xavier frowned. "How long have you been working today?" "Since 10. It's almost 6, he stared at them. "And no meal break," they shook their heads. One of them picked at a sandwich, the other just looked down. That night, Xavier sat in the break room alone, staring at the schedule posted on the wall. The gaps were clear. 3 open positions unfilled, no designated lunch shifts for part-timers, and double-booked cleaning assignments. He didn't sleep well. By the next morning, the tension between him and Dana had become obvious. She avoided him entirely, barking orders at others and refusing to acknowledge his presence. Curtis kept quiet but handed him a clipboard with a note. "Inspect incoming vehicles thoroughly. Don't skip anything." Xavier took the hint. Midday, a family of 5 arrived, parents and 3 kids under 10. Their reservation had been placed weeks in advance for a 7-seat SUV. Marcy handled check-in while Xavier went to retrieve the vehicle. The SUV was parked in back, partially hidden. As soon as he opened the door, he saw the problem: cracked leather seats, dried gum on the floor, and the 3rd-row seatbelt torn at the anchor. He walked it back to the service lane. Dana spotted him. "Why isn't that out front?" "The seatbelt's broken." "It still drives, doesn't it?" "They have kids. It's a safety issue." She crossed the lot toward him. "You don't make that call, I do. You're compromising child safety." "Then clean it up, tape the belt, and move it." He stared at her. "You want me to tape a seat belt?" She said nothing, just glared. Xavier turned and walked back inside. He found Marcy stacking key tags. "Can you do me a favor?" he asked. "Tell that family their vehicle isn't ready. Offer them a refund or a voucher for tomorrow." Her eyes widened. "Dana will lose it. I'll take the heat." She nodded slowly. Moments later, Dana stormed in, face red. "You went behind my back again." "I stopped a safety violation." "You're done," she snapped. "Clock out, leave your badge." Xavier dropped the clipboard on the counter. "Gladly." Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out his real wallet. Inside was a company ID card with his photo and title. Chief Executive Officer. Curtis looked up from his terminal. Dana froze. "What is that?" "My name's not Eric," he said calmly. "It's Xavier Olson. I own this company." The room went completely silent. Curtis stood up slowly, unsure whether to sit back down or run. Marcy covered her mouth. Xavier turned toward Dana. "You're relieved of your duties, effective immediately." She looked stunned. "You can't, I just did." He turned to Curtis. "You're interim manager. We'll talk about permanent structure later." Dana opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Xavier walked past her toward the back lot. He didn't need to look back to know that every employee in the room was watching. He just hoped they finally felt seen. Curtis hadn't moved. He stood behind the desk, eyes on Xavier, as if waiting for someone to shout cut and tell him this was all a setup. But no one did. Xavier turned to him. "I need you to do one thing right now. Lock Dana out of the system. Remove her access to scheduling, payroll, all of it." Curtis nodded slowly and walked over to the terminal. Xavier scanned the room. The lobby was quiet, except for the low hum of the ceiling fan. The family he'd helped earlier had already driven off. Marcy stood near the key rack, still holding a clipboard in both hands, her knuckles white. He gestured gently toward her. "Can you gather the rest of the team? I want to speak to everyone." She gave a quick nod and hurried toward the back lot. Curtis looked up from the terminal. "She's locked out. I'll collect her keys." "She's already gone," Xavier said. "She left the second I turned my back." Curtis blinked. "She didn't even say anything?" "No, just walked." He let out a breath. That tracks. Within 10 minutes, the team had assembled near the service bay. 5 employees stood in a loose half circle: Curtis, Marcy, Miles, and the 2 high schoolers from the wash station. Another young woman joined at the last second, wiping her hands with a towel from the detail room. There were no smiles, only guarded faces. Xavier stepped forward, still in the dusty uniform shirt. He hadn't changed, hadn't showered, hadn't even taken off the cap. He didn't want to come in looking like a CEO. He wanted them to see someone who had worked beside them and understood what that meant. "I want to thank all of you for not walking out." No one moved. "I've been here 3 days," he continued. "That's all it took to see that you've been carrying this place without support, without the right tools, and without leadership that listens." Marcy shifted slightly but said nothing. "I can't fix everything overnight," he added. "But effective immediately, things are going to change. First, we're cutting the store's operating hours by 1 hour starting tomorrow. That'll give us space to reallocate schedules and make sure no one's working illegal shifts." Curtis furrowed his brow. "Won't that hit revenue? We're already losing revenue by driving customers away with unsafe vehicles and burned-out staff. I'd rather run 1 clean shift than 2 broken ones." He turned to the high schoolers. "You too. You're staying under 6 hours a day from now on. You'll get a proper break, even if it's unpaid. Nobody skips meals here again." They exchanged glances, unsure whether to believe him. Xavier looked to Curtis. "You're the acting manager until further notice. You'll get full access to everything Dana had. I'll review your pay adjustment myself." Curtis blinked. "I wasn't sure if you even knew my name." "I knew your name. I just had to see the job you were doing without a title." Curtis nodded once. "I can build a schedule tonight." Marcy stepped forward. "What about the cars? Half of them aren't safe." Xavier paused. "I've already called fleet services. Starting tomorrow, we're pulling every unit with unresolved maintenance issues. If that leaves us short, so be it. I'd rather issue refunds than put someone's life at risk." Miles crossed his arms. "And Dana? She no longer works for this company. Her behavior was unacceptable, and we'll be reviewing every complaint filed under her management." Curtis stepped in. "There were a few, but most people never filed anything." Xavier looked to the team. "If you have something to report, anything that happened under her supervision, you can speak to HR directly or to me. No one will be penalized. That's a promise." The young woman from the detail room raised her hand slowly. "She called me a liability once. Said my limp made us look bad." Xavier's jaw tightened. "What's your name?" "Jenna." "You're not a liability, Jenna. If you need modified duties, we'll accommodate them. If she ever put you in danger because of that limp, I want it documented." She gave a small nod. A silence settled over the group, heavy but not hostile. Then Curtis cleared his throat. "There's something else," he said. "I think you should see the back inventory room. Dana had it locked to floor staff, said it was for her use only." "She kept it locked?" Xavier asked. Curtis nodded. "For months. Show me." They walked through the corridor past the laundry bins and into a narrow hallway. At the end was a gray steel door with a keypad. Curtis punched in a code and the lock clicked open. He pushed the door wide. Xavier stepped in and stopped. The room was filled with unopened cleaning supplies, spare filters, air fresheners, and boxes of new seat covers. Shelves were stocked with oil, brake pads, AC recharge kits, and windshield wipers, everything they'd been short on. "This could have fixed half the issues I saw this week," Xavier murmured. Curtis shook his head. "She ordered supplies under budget and hoarded them, said it reduced misuse." Xavier stared at the boxes. "We've been losing customers while she sat on everything that could have helped." Curtis stepped back into the hallway. "She set the tone. People got used to thinking nothing would change." Xavier turned to him. "It's changing now." That evening, once the store closed, Xavier stayed behind. He called HR to initiate a formal review of Store 4's employment practices and insisted a regional safety officer be dispatched the next morning. Then he made 2 more calls, one to the district manager who'd approved his undercover visit, and one to the head of fleet operations. Both were brief. When he returned to the lobby, he found Marcy wiping down the front counter. "You're still here?" he asked. "Figured I'd finish what I started." He walked over. "You ever think of moving up?" She looked up, surprised. "Me, you've got good instincts. You handled that family with care, didn't hesitate when I asked you to step in. That's leadership." She hesitated. "I don't have experience." "Neither did I when I started." She gave a small laugh. "You're the CEO, you probably had a plan." "I had a truck and a website." "That was it." She looked down at the rag in her hand. "I don't know, I just want to make sure my mom doesn't lose the apartment." "We can help with that too." She froze. Xavier continued. "I'd like to offer you a position as team lead. It'll come with a raise and guaranteed hours. We'll figure out scheduling to make sure it doesn't interfere with school if you're doing that too." Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" "I don't say things I don't mean." She blinked quickly. "Then, yes, I'd like that." Curtis appeared from the back room. "Fleet inspection team just confirmed for tomorrow morning." "Good," Xavier replied. "We'll walk them through every vehicle." Curtis nodded. "We're going to need a clipboard army." Xavier looked around the lobby. It still smelled faintly of old carpet and pine-scented air freshener. But for the first time since he stepped into Store 4, it didn't feel broken. It felt like something they could fix. He turned to Curtis and Marcy. "Let's build it the right way this time." Neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. They just got back to work. By Friday morning, the parking lot at Store 4 was half empty. Several vehicles had been pulled from the lineup and parked in the far side of the yard, marked with red tags. A team of 2 fleet safety officers arrived at 8 sharp, clipboards in hand. Xavier met them by the service lane, walking them through the flagged cars himself. Curtis had already laid out every maintenance log and incident report he could find. Some were incomplete, others were missing altogether. "Who was signing off on these?" one inspector asked. Xavier didn't answer immediately. He let the silence speak for itself. Inside, the tone had shifted. It wasn't relaxed, no one had forgotten the week they'd just endured, but there was a cautious sense of alignment. Employees weren't looking over their shoulders anymore. They were looking at each other. Jenna arrived early, limping slightly, and picked up her tasks without hesitation. When she saw the stock supply closet now unlocked, she froze at the doorway. Curtis joined her. "We've got everything backlogged in the system now. Take what you need." She didn't reply right away. Just grabbed a bundle of microfiber towels and went back to detailing the crossover from the night shift. Marcy, now in a company-issued polo with a new badge clipped on, was adjusting the keyboard behind the counter. The title below her name read Team Lead. "Your color coding by size class?" Xavier asked, stepping up beside her. "Helps with rush hours," she said. "People panic when they see that board messy." He nodded once. "Good call." She hesitated. "Can I ask something?" "Of course." "You said you started with just a truck and a website. What made you want to do all this?" He leaned on the counter. "I rented a car once that stalled on the freeway. No apology from the company. No refund. They told me to read the terms and conditions. I figured I could do better." She smiled faintly. "So you did?" "Not always. I got too far from the ground, forgot what the floor feels like on your feet." She glanced toward the service bay where the 2 high schoolers were unloading a shipment of windshield wipers. "You're back now." Xavier straightened. "I won't disappear again." By noon, the inspectors were finishing up. One of them approached Xavier while the other finished snapping photos of a minivan's undercarriage. "About 28% of this fleet shouldn't have been in circulation," the inspector said. "We'll send a full report to your central team, but I'd recommend suspending rentals for the next 3 days while this location resets." Curtis joined them, wiping his hands on a towel. "We've already started reassigning reservations to nearby branches." "Good," Xavier said. "Let me know if you need extra staffing to support that." "We'll make it work," Curtis replied, "but we'll need help long term. We're still understaffed." "I've got that in motion." HR's reviewing applications from nearby stores and reaching out to some of the folks who left recently. Curtis raised an eyebrow. You think they'll come back? If they hear what's changed, they might. After the inspectors left, Xavier gathered the team again. This time they stood in the staff room, not the service bay. The air conditioning hummed overhead, not powerful but functioning. I'm not going to give a big speech, he started. This week spoke for itself. Miles stood near the doorway, arms folded. You planning to do this at the other stores? I've already visited 3 in the last 2 months, Xavier said. But none looked like this. Jenna leaned against the counter. So why stay undercover? Why not just show up? If I'd walked in as the CEO, I would have gotten a tour, a polished car, and a lunch break. I needed the truth. Curtis nodded thoughtfully. You got it. I did, and now I need something from you. They all looked at him. Hold each other accountable. Speak up when something's off. Don't wait for corporate to fix things. Be the reason this place stays right. Marcy lifted her hand. What if something goes wrong again? It will, Xavier said plainly. This isn't a perfect system, but if it does, you've got direct lines now. Curtis has my contact. So does HR. You're not on your own anymore. The 2 younger employees exchanged glances. One of them raised a hand hesitantly. Are we still allowed to work weekends? You are, Xavier said, but not more than 6 hours a day and only if your parents sign off. We'll make sure you get your breaks. He turned back to the group. Dana's gone. Her decisions didn't reflect who we are or what we stand for. If anyone else ever treats you that way, you come to me, immediately. Curtis cleared his throat. One last thing. We've got a customer waiting in the lobby. Says he's returning a car early because it smells like mildew. Xavier clenched his jaw. Is it one of the flagged units? Not sure yet, but I'll handle it. No, I will, Xavier said. He deserves to hear it from the top. He walked into the lobby where a man in his 50s stood at the desk, arms crossed. The keys were already on the counter. I'm sorry about the smell, Xavier said as he approached. We're pulling that unit from circulation, effective immediately. The man looked surprised. You with management? I'm the CEO, his eyebrows lifted. You're joking. No, sir, I've been working here all week. We're making changes. If you give us another chance, I'll make sure your next vehicle is spotless and fully inspected. The man studied him for a moment. You're serious? I am, he nodded slowly. All right, I'll give you one more shot. Xavier shook his hand. Thank you. Outside, as the sun began to dip behind the hills, the lot was quieter than usual. Fewer cars, fewer customers. But something about it felt steadier. Not back to normal, but moving towards something better. Marcy stepped outside, a clipboard under her arm. We've got room for 5 more reservations next week, assuming the cleaned units pass inspection. They will, Xavier said. She looked toward the back lot. You think the other stores are this bad? They all have their cracks, but this one's been patched. With the right people. Curtis joined them, keys jingling in his hand. Fleet Services just confirmed a delivery for Monday. We'll get 6 replacements. Good, Xavier said. We'll need them. The 3 of them stood quietly for a moment, watching as Jenna and Miles finished wiping down the last car for the day. The 2 younger employees were inside, restocking air fresheners and laughing over something one of them had spilled. Xavier looked around. This is what it should have been all along, Curtis nodded. It's getting there. As the sun dipped lower, Xavier stepped off the curb and walked the length of the lot, checking each car by hand. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Tomorrow, he would visit another store. The next week, another. But tonight, Store 4 was exactly where it needed to be, imperfect, tired, but standing tall. And no one, not one person, was being ignored anymore.